Laat de way, Father, for I am your son. Use me as your vessel in your worship. Light the way, Father, and divine Mother, for I am your son. Use me as your vessel for work in your worship. Light the way, universe, for I am your son. Use me as your vessel for life in your worship. So, life, or what I've come to know, is one big road with lots of signs, and the signs are there for everybody to see. If you're open, you're aware, and you're willing to believe in everything that is possible, for there is nothing that is impossible. So when you're riding through the ruts, don't you complicate your mind. Flee from hate, mischief and jealousy. Don't bury your thoughts. Put your vision to reality. Wake up and live. Yeah. Words by Bob Marley, who has been a significant impact upon my journey. A lot of the words he has spoken about standing in your truth and living in love and light, that is what I believe. So my name is Rameka. I was born Rameka Stewart. And to start off with, I'd just like to give thanks, because I believe that living the life that you live, you always hold that attitude of gratitude. Gratitude, let it be your attitude. So take a look around. Thank you for this beautiful day, for the sun shining, the ocean behind us. Thanks to Brother Erman for calling me upon him to do this with you. Cheers, brother. I give thanks to all the elders and the ancestors of all these lands. I give thanks to all my elders, ancestors, my guides, my beings, angels, all my loved ones and friends living in past. I thank my past and my present for bringing me to who I am today. And I thank my future for wherever that may be leading. So I guess we're here to talk story, right? To give you an understanding of who I am and where I come from and why I do what I do. So as I said, I was born Rameka Stewart in Paraparaumu, which is on the Kapiti coast of Wellington, New Zealand, the bottom of the North Island. I've had a colourful life so far, you know, and I give thanks for every single part of it, every single person that was part of it and is part of it. So I was born, yeah, on the Kapiti coast. I guess giving you the understanding of everything that has happened, which has led me to who I am today and what I do. So to start off with, I was born, from what I remember, being able to see and feel and hear things, and to physically touch spirit, if you want to call it spirit, or beings. I come from a beautiful family that raised me. many thanks to them. So when I was born, from what I know, before I was born, my birth father left, and my mother raised me from when I was a baby. And then when I was between the ages of 3 and 4, I think it was, my mother left. And we grew up, well, I grew up in my grandmother's house, which she still has today. So my grandmother looked after me a lot, or everybody did that was there. You know, my grandmother, grandfather, aunties, uncles. So I remember growing up as a little kid, as a little boy. My grandfather, rest in peace, he was a famous pen collector in New Zealand. He had literally over 39,000 different writing pens. So he'd always be down in his garage shed working with his pens. My grandmother worked at Woolworths. And, you know, my mum, bless her, I love her very much. She was a good mother to me as I was growing up. But I guess, in a way, it really rocked me and struck a chord of pain deep inside when she left as well. Which then led to most of my life so far, running from many things, especially myself. So I thought that, well, if your own father and your own mother can leave you, then love is not real, put in nice words. So, but you know, going back to when my mother was around, I remember I used to walk down to the tavern, to the pub, to find her when I was 2. It would probably take me about 40 minutes. But I remember, you know, walking down to the shopping centre to find my mother at the tavern, drinking with her friends. Or I would walk down to the shopping centre, go to the Woolworths to find my grandmother. And she would ask what I was doing there and ask where my mother was. I said she was at the pub. So my grandmother would put me up in the tea room and I got to know everybody that she worked with. And it was a usual thing, you know. If no one was around or at home, I'd go knocking on the next door neighbours' doors and they would look after me till my grandmother came home and they would feed me. But it was in those moments that I remember physically seeing things that people today wouldn't class as being real. So when I was maybe 2.5, I was walking down to the tavern to find my mother. And where I lived, or where my grandmother's house is today, you come out the house and you go up this hill, and then you come down into what is the domain. So it goes down into the track, the grass field, and then it leads through there to the club rooms, to the rugby league fields. And I used to walk through there when I would go down to find my mother or my grandma. And I remember one day I was walking along, and as I was walking along the grass, I noticed this light glowing beside me, and I looked up and there was this man, or there was this being walking beside me. Now obviously for a 2-year-old kid, you know, seeing a grown person, you know, obviously they're very big. But to me this being was huge. A lot taller than what we are today. And he was glowing gold. He had on this long white robe. He had a long beard, long hair, and he had this wooden staff. And as I was walking with him, I said, "Oh, who are you?" And he said, "I'm the father," right? So, okay, I said, "Oh, I'm Rameka." And he started laughing. And then I asked, "Why are you walking with me?" He said, "Because you need to be protected, because one day you're going to help change the world." I didn't understand what that meant, obviously. And then from that point on, I don't remember the rest of the conversation, but we walked on. And that was one of the earliest moments that I remember physically seeing beings, or spirit if you call it spirit, ascended beings. So I guess the way I live my life, or the way I have lived my life, is much like a gypsy. I'm good to go. I'll go wherever I need. And I guess that's been the way it has since I was a baby. I'd put my gumboots on and out the door I'd go. It doesn't matter if no one was home. I knew where I was going, what I needed to do. And I guess I was guided by the light, Then my mother left. She moved to Australia, and I spent a lot of time, I guess, in tears maybe, as a lot of kids would. Even though my birth parents left, that's not saying there was no love, right? Because today, my birth mother lives in the North Island in New Zealand. My birth father lives in Brisbane. I have nothing against them for leaving, and I know the love is always there. So, grew up with my grandparents. And then when I was 5, my grandmother asked my auntie and her husband to adopt me. Alright, so I was adopted, and I went through the court process, and I remember sitting there. My parents were sitting beside me, or my parents now were sitting beside me, and there's a big wooden desk, and the judge was sitting on the other side. She was an Asian judge in the black robe, and she asked me, 5 years old, "Rameka, do you want to become part of this family?" None the wiser. Yes. Right? And I'm grateful. I am. I became part of that family, and my name was formally changed to Rameka Chin. So most people call me Rameka. The correct pronunciation of my name is actually Rameka. So it's either Rameka or Ra, which most people know me by. So I was adopted when I was 5 years old. Adopted, name changed to Rameka Chin because my father now, he's Chinese Malaysian. And I remember, when time came to leave my grandmother's house, because she is probably the closest one that I am to. I'm probably the closest to her than anyone else, in my life. So when the time came to move, we moved from Wellington to Auckland with my family. When we moved, I guess I couldn't handle the pain of having to leave my grandmother. So, my mother, it's a funny story now, but my mother told me at the time that I wore a paper bag over my head, and I didn't take it off till we got to Auckland, and that's a 7-hour drive. So she said I wore it over my head because I didn't want to see my grandmother waving goodbye. So to this day, you know, very, very close. But I understand now, looking back at all those experiences, they're part of who made me today. So everybody's experiences are part of who they become. And we can choose to look at it in light and love, or we can choose to focus on that pain and negativity and that lower vibration which continues to drag you down. So we moved to Auckland, and then my parents had another 2 children, 2 girls. So I have a sister, the next sibling down. I have a sister, she lives in Cairns. And then after her, there's another sister who lives currently in Oman in the Middle East with her husband and my niece, her daughter. So we grew up in Auckland for a little while. Went to school up there, and from Auckland we moved back to Wellington due to the nature of my father's job. And for me, I've never been one to gel with authority, I guess, if you want to call it that. Not so much a troublemaker, it's just, I guess, didn't want to be put in a box. I didn't really want to be like everybody else. So yeah, I went wild, I guess, if you want to call it. That's what people call it today. Some would call it a rebel, which in a sense it was, I guess. Mostly what I feel it is you know, I was reacting to hurt and pain that I'd been through by not having my mother around, or my grandmother. So when we moved back to Wellington, I was going to school in Wellington. And as I said before, you know, I've had a colourful life, so been in and out of trouble a lot. I was kicked out of school a lot. And now you look back and you laugh at those experiences. You know, you're like, little shit, but like I said, you know, it's those experiences that create who you become. It just depends how you choose to carry that weight, that baggage that we go through. So when I was, how old was I? Between the ages of 9 and 11, I think it was, I can't remember exactly, I ran away from home. Not a smart thing to do, but many times I just felt like I didn't belong. And I even remember going back, it was right back to when I was a little kid, and just looking up at the sky and asking them to take me home. It was like I knew that something wasn't right, like I didn't belong here. And that's come and gone all throughout my life. You know, this beach right behind me, Burleigh Beach, beautiful beach. I've had moments down here where I've come out on the sand crying and screamed at the stars to take me home. For some people, you go to a nut house, but for me, it's that there's a higher connection there. So I ran away from home. I guess I was lost. I've been lost for I was lost for a long time. Always searching, which is, I guess, why I was always ready to just pack up and go. after I ran away from home. You know, my parents obviously beside themselves. And then, you know, I did it a couple more times. You know, and I love my parents, so I wouldn't be where I am today without them. So, you know, they're not bad people. I love them very much. I remember when I was 13 or 14, we went as a family, we went travelling around the South Island in a camper van. And we stopped off one late afternoon, down some dirt path, and we drove down the path into the trees and near the river. And we were playing, and there was this bridge going across the river. And I remember I went to go walk across this bridge, and I heard this voice in my ear, and it said, "You are not welcome here." And at that time, yeah, obviously it scared me. Right, so I was like, went back off the bridge, went back down to the water, and my sisters were there, and we were swimming in the water. And then as night fell, so I don't know what it is about that area. Maybe the land was sacred. But as night fell, I remember we were in the caravan eating dinner, and then I started to shake uncontrollably. I had goosebumps all over me, and I was shaking, and I had tears running down my face. I said to my parents, I said, "We can't stay here. We're not meant to be here. All right, we have to leave. We have to leave. There's something about this place. We've got to go." And we left, you know. My parents, even though they may not fully believe in what I believe in and the path that I walk, they believed me at that time enough to trust that something wasn't right. So all these sorts of experiences have come and gone all throughout my life. When I was a teenager, we moved to Singapore. And we lived in Singapore for a few years. I went to the Australian International School, where once again I made a terrible impact, if you want to call it that. I was suspended 3 times in school, just for going against authority, I guess, against the system, against teachers. So yeah, I was suspended in school. They put me in the library covering books, and it was like a week period for each suspension. So, you know, I became a professional book coverer. But lived in Singapore, loved the place. You know, met some awesome people there. And then from Singapore, we moved to Jakarta, Indonesia, where I went to the British International School. And I finished school in 96, I think it was, 96, 97. We were there during the political riots, and that was pretty intense. Never experienced something like that when you see, you know, soldiers and militia and whatever you call them, walking around with machine guns and army tanks and all that sort of stuff. I love Indonesia. It's an amazing place, and beautiful people and amazing food. So I was living in Indonesia, where my parents lived for a majority of the time so far. And when I was 17, I think it was, my mother took me back to New Zealand after school. And trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. So art was a big thing for me, being an artist. And I went to the local, not the local, sorry, I went to the Polytech, which is a TAFE, I guess, and enrolled in Toi Whakairo, which is Māori arts. So enrolled in Māori arts and started learning how to carve, like wood carving, bone carving. This is where I learned how to make the string, the rope for these necklaces. When I was there, so I moved in with my grandmother, moved back to my grandma's house, living in the garage, and my mum dropped me off and she went back to Indonesia. And living at my grandmother's, doing this this training, this course, learning how to do the artworks of my people in this lifetime. I met a man who became a very significant point in my life at that time, and still is today. He showed me many things, he taught me many things, and I guess in a sense even though I had a father growing up and I loved my dad, there was that cultural connection through my then mentor, right? And he became a father figure to me. And obviously, you know, in the world of the Māori, when you begin to learn the artworks, the history, the ways of life, you start to learn the ancestry. And it so happens that, you know, that I am related to this man as well. So I found that out. And, you know, it's a funny thing about marriage. It's like everybody calls you cuz or bro. And like literally you probably are cousins or... We do come from big tribes, big people. So I learned a lot of things under him, and I did that for a few years. And I guess while I was in there, you know, picked up alcohol and partying with the boys. You know, we'd go out, we'd have a good time, and yes, we'd get up to mischief. We got into drugs, not the hard drugs, got into drugs, marijuana. You know, and got caught up in I guess your homies, if you want to call it that. So we'd drink, we'd take drugs as women, you know, we'd end up in fights. I guess one day, you know, one day I got in a little bit too much trouble, and you know, my grandmother called up my parents and told them I had to get out of there. So Because I'm grateful I had the parents and have the parents that I've got. Because if it weren't for them, yeah, I probably would be, you know, knee deep in trouble or jail, dead, whatever. So after learning a lot from uncle or matua at the course, I was taken back to Jakarta, Indonesia, moved back in with my parents. You know, and by that time we were a family of, how many? 1, 2, 7. So I've got 2 sisters and 2 younger brothers. A brother that lives in New Zealand and a brother that lives in the UK. All awesome beings, all awesome people, amazing people, who I love dearly. So I moved back to Jakarta, Indonesia, and my dad got me work in graphic design to become a art director, I guess. So for 1 year I was part of a company called Brazil, and then after that I was moved to FCB for a year. Now Indonesia is very, very strong with superstitions, and yeah, a lot of cultures, most cultures are, right? I remember finishing work late one night at FCB, and FCB was the office right next to the Australian embassy that blew up when they tried to attack it, or when they did attack it. I remember finishing work there late one night. I think it was about 1:30 in the morning, and I went and grabbed a taxi. You know, taxis are cheap, and it takes like 40 minutes to get home. It was like, I guess maybe $10 roundabout, give or take. I finished work late one night, got in the taxi, and there's a couple of ways that you can get home. And the taxi driver, he took off, and the route that he was going, we had to go past one of the largest cemeteries there. And I guess this is just an experience as to why I do what I do today. So when we're in the taxi and we're coming up to that cemetery, there was a song, I can't remember the song now, but there was a song playing on the radio, and as we got closer to the cemetery, I could hear this laughter coming through the speakers, and there's little kids laughing like they're playing at a park, and then I'd hear this piercing scream of a female, and then there was this deep voice going ha 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 ha, like this, like movie sort of stuff, right? And as we came up to the cemetery, this laughing and the screaming coming through, the music died out, and that's all I heard. And I said to the taxi driver, I said, "Oh, can you hear that?" And he said, "Yeah, it's a good song, mister, a good song." So he couldn't hear what I was hearing. Anyway, we turned at the lights, and as we turned at the lights, something said, "Don't look out the window." You know when people tell you not to do something, you go do it? So someone was saying, "Don't look out that window," and I looked out that window, and I turned to look out the window like this. And as I looked, I saw this woman. She had a yellow tank top on and blue denim shorts, and she was jumping down the street like this with her arms up, but as she danced, her head would flip backwards, like her neck would bend and she could see straight directly backwards. And as she jumped past this bus shelter, and by this bus shelter there was this shadow, like black shadow, must have been over 10 foot tall at least, right? And there were these glowing eyes, and that's where I figured the ha 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 was coming from. And I turned back, we kept going, felt the goosebumps and everything like that, and we drove past and music came back on. I got home and my mum woke up, she came out, she goes, "Hey, how was work? Your dinner's in the oven." She asked me what was wrong, and I told her. And she said, "Just say your prayers. Say your prayers to God and stay in the light and everything will be all right." That was a significant experience for me. I guess because I've had all sorts of different experiences throughout my life, but that was a significant experience for me because, sound mind and body, it's reaffirming to me, obviously, there are things outside of what society or what we know in this physical world, right? So, living in Jakarta, Indonesia, I met some amazing people. And then from Jakarta, I left and moved to Australia. So I moved to Australia in 2002. My birth mother was living in Sydney. So I moved to Sydney with her and her partner. And I spent a year in Sydney with her. And then while I was down there, my father called up from Indonesia and he asked me if I wanted some work for his company. So his company owned a station up in the Northern Territory at the time. In Katherine, Northern Territory. So I said, yeah, sure. And I was flying up to Darwin and moved to Katherine. I lived on a cattle station. And, I became in charge of feeding all the cattle. We'd wake up early, we'd go muster cattle, we'd ride horses, bikes. I'd mow the fields of grass, I'd stack the hay and build the fences, all that sort of stuff. So, it was an eye-opener for me, living outback, I guess, like the cowboys do out there. It was an amazing experience, but when I look at it now, it was an awesome experience. But at that time, I guess I wasn't mature enough to understand. And I was still attached to wanting to party, to wanting to drink and have fun. So I spent a while there on the farm, living in Katherine. And I guess, I did build a name up for myself, which, isn't a great name, but it was for being a party animal up there and down here on the Gold Coast, which I'm not necessarily proud of, but do I regret it? No, because it gave me all the understandings that I needed today. So I was living in Katherine for a while, and from Katherine, Northern Territory, I moved with a brother of mine, a good mate, down to Tennant Creek, and I began working in hospitality. So I started as a room cleaner, making beds, cleaning rooms, cleaning toilets, all that sort of stuff. And then from there, became a waiter, a barman. I love the Northern Territory. It's an amazing place. We've got some awesome people up there. And it's such a, all land is, but it's such a sacred place to be. When, I guess, I've had a lot of experiences, as I've said, with things that people wouldn't usually see or feel. And I guess what really opened up who I am to do what I do today is 2005. I was 24 years old, living in Tennant Creek, and it was Boxing Day 2004. Did I say 2005? Yeah, Boxing Day 2004. I was living in Tennant Creek, Northern Territory. And we were out drinking. You know, they have those orphan parties. So if you don't have family around, you go drink with your friends. And I was going around drinking with friends, and I went to this one house, and the friend of mine there, and him and his girlfriend were there. And he received a phone call from her dad because he hadn't seen her for Christmas yet, and asked them to come over and see them. And he asked if I could go with him. So I was like, okay, cool. We went to the house, ended up drinking with her father. And I guess from there it was all a blur, you know, because I was very drunk. We left that house. I was a front seat passenger. And what followed from that moment is, I guess, I had what people call a near-death experience. So all I remember really is driving along. It was late at night. We drove out of town, and my friend, she was driving. She was going faster and faster, and she wouldn't slow down. And we came up to a big bend. There was 5 of us in the car. We came up to a big bend in the road, and she lost control. The car went this way, and then she tried to gain control of it again, and as she turned it back, the car went that way, straight across the highway at night time. And as the car went across the highway, it hit the ditch, and it went nose first, and the car went up. And I remember looking straight down at the cement pipe under the highway, a big cement pipe, or what I remember to be a cement pipe. And from that minute, I was lights out. The car rolled, and when it stopped, we were lucky, well, I was lucky that the car landed on its base and not its roof. When the car landed, I guess it shocked me back, awake, or whatever. And I turned to look, and my friend who was driving, she was seconds away from death, and she was on the steering wheel looking straight at me. My friend's girlfriend, she also died. My friend now, he's paralyzed. So she lost control of the car at over 180 k's. And we rolled just under 100 meters. So we had that accident. The only reason why they found us is because there happened to be, you know, an off-duty police officer driving behind us, and he saw all the dust in the air. Now, if he wasn't there, we would have been food for the you know, iguanas, whatever, the kangaroos and dingoes and all that. The ambulance came, took us away. I remember being in hospital in Tennant Creek, and I was laying there, and I had my mate's football jersey on, and I didn't want them to cut the football jersey off because it belonged to my mate, and we were good friends. Unbeknownst to me, at that same time, he was also having his own experience, because at that time he went missing out at sea for 7 weeks. The same day that I had my accident, he went missing out at sea, and they found him 7 weeks later. Him, his uncle, and one of his friends or cousins. But I remember laying on the hospital bed, and then a doctor, she was standing at my head looking down, and she held me by the face. She had an English accent, and she said, "Honey, do you know what happened?" I said, "Yeah, we're at a party." And then she told me, she said, no. She goes, "You were in a car accident." And then it slowly started to sink in, I guess. And I said, "Well, where are my friends?" And she said, and she held my face like a mother, and she said, "I'm so sorry, but they're dead. They didn't make it." And I lost it. You know, sobbing, pain, hurt, all that sort of stuff. I think that's the point where I must have been out or crossed over, whatever you want to call it. And I remember floating in space, on what looked like space. I could see stars, you know, all those universal colours. And as I was floating there was a being behind me. And he must be about 12 foot, or it must be about 12 foot. Bald head, long, slender, tall, well built, grey in colour. Yeah, grey in colour, and like black face, head. And as we were floating there, or as I was floating there in space, I remember there was a portal, if you want to call it a portal, and it literally looked like you ever seen what's the movie? Stargate, right? It was oval shaped, and there was this like shimmer, like water, like Stargate has. And as I was floating there, I was looking through, and I could see, I guess, what some people would call heaven, if you believe in that. Everybody has their own beliefs, right? I guess for me, everybody has their own beliefs, but unless you experience it and test those beliefs to be true, you don't know. So I was floating there, and looking through, literally looked like if you've seen Avatar, right? Or Jumanji, right? Looked like this beautiful land on the other side of that gateway. But as I was floating there, I heard this deep voice, and it's a voice that I've heard all my life. To me, that voice is a representation of God. Now, I don't mean God in a religious sense. I mean God in a universal presence, being. I heard this voice in my ear, and I always hear it in my right ear. I heard this voice, and it said, "It is not yet your time, my son." And as if it was a joke, I literally saw this foot come out of that gateway, and it booted me, and I fell back down into my body. So I was flown on the Flying Doctors from Tennant Creek to Alice Springs. I remember lying there in the hospital in the emergency department, in the emergency ward. I was lying there, people are rushing past, and as I was lying there, I felt these hands on my right forearm, and I sort of tried to look down, and as I looked down, there was an Aboriginal man, woman, and 2 children. There was a boy and a girl, and they were standing there holding my arm, and the Aboriginal man spoke, and he said, "You be strong, young brother, it's going to be okay." I guess for me, that I took that as a sign of cultural respect, because I have deep respect for all Indigenous cultures, or for all peoples. As they held my arm and spoke, after he finished speaking, they disappeared right before my eyes. And like I said at the start, I could physically touch spirit when I was a kid. They were physically touching my arm, and they disappeared. Then began, the journey of healing. Friends came down to find me. My birth mother at the time, she had moved up to Darwin, and she was living in Darwin at the time I had my accident. No one knew how to contact my family, and she found out through the news, because the news said that 24-year-old male Rameka deceased in a car accident, single car rollover. And she was frantic, calling up the hospitals looking for me, and she got hold of me and was on the phone. And then she organised to come down to Tennant Creek with to Alice Springs, with my mother that lived in Indonesia. So they both came down to Alice Springs. They both came to Alice Springs, and I wouldn't say I was lucky, because I don't really believe in luck. All right? No such thing as luck. No such thing as coincidences, mistakes, accidents, random. Everything that I have learnt so far through my experiences, everything happens when and as it is meant to. So, when I was in the hospital, I had a police officer come in, and he questioned me about the accident. And he said that, you're lucky to be alive. I'm grateful to be alive. Very. And, all I had really was I almost lost my eye. Got a scar here. Hit by the airbag, bruised lung. My mothers came down, and they drove back up to Tennant Creek. We could only really go like 70, 80 k's an hour because I was too scared, obvious reasons. So we drove up to Tennant Creek, where I moved in with a friend and his family. And then one day they mentioned that they had had enough and they were coming to Queensland. And they asked if I wanted to come with them. So I came to Queensland, to Toowoomba, in 2005, after healing, still healing. When I came to Queensland, I was working as a barman. Well, I spent time in Toowoomba recovering on their farm. And then I moved to the Gold Coast, Southport. And I began working as a barman at Parkwood Tavern. And while I was working there, I got introduced to Surfers Paradise. That place over there. Where I became lost in alcohol and drugs. I was trying to cover and mask my pain that I wasn't dealing with. while I was on the Gold Coast, my mother moved back to Sydney. One day she called up and she asked me to come to Sydney to get some healing done. And I'd never had healing before. So went down to Sydney, and some of her friends, they're kahuna therapists. So I went and got healings. And then she took me for a reading with a psychic medium. And I'd never met a psychic medium before. Even though I'd seen psychics when I was younger, like fears and that, I'd never met a psychic medium. So I went to see this lady, and I was joking in the car to my mother. And I said, oh, was she going to tell me the winning lotto numbers or something? Anyway, went and seen this lady, and she was another significant light in my life, you know, and God bless wherever she may be now. Her name was Lynette. And I went to see her for a reading, and she said to me, she goes, you're meant to be doing what I'm doing. And I said, yeah, right. I'm not doing that. No way. She said, yes, you're meant to be doing what I'm doing, and one day you're going to help change the world. And I just laughed at her. I said, yeah, whatever. And then she said, okay. She goes, you were in a car accident, red car, 5 of you. You died, you came back, you're the only one that made it. Full recovery. I was like, okay. Now she's piquing my interest. Maybe this lady's onto something. Right? And then she told me, you know, you want to join the army, don't you? And at that time I did. I was thinking about the money. You know, you join the army, you get money, you go away, you fight. And where I was at that time due to my accident, I couldn't really be bothered with life. So she said, no, you're not meant to join the army. She said, you'll end up dead. She said, there's a guy in Brisbane. You need to go see him because he'll help you find what you're meant to do in this life. As he had helped her. I was like, okay. And the last thing she said as a joke, or we laughed, the last thing she said before we left, she said, and no, I'm not going to tell you the winning lotto numbers. So, you know, to me, she's authentic. And being authentic in this field, the field of energy and spirit, it's not easy to find. So many people want competition or want to be number one or you know, want a name for themselves. It's not about that. It's about being of service and delivering the message of light, I guess, to help change this world. So, went back up to Gold Coast and ended up going to Brisbane one Sunday. I drove into this house in Brisbane, and there was this man, and he was running meditations underneath his home. So you got the Queenslander, he was running meditation classes underneath. And I had never meditated in my life. And as I pulled in, one of my mates was dropping me off, and we pulled in. And as we pulled in, this man came walking outside. Big dark-skinned man. Right? And he walked up to the car, and I said, oh, hey, my name is Rameka. I'm here to see Jason. I'm here for a class. And he came right up to my face at the window. And he looked straight at me and he said, yes, it is time. Come inside. Me and my mate looked at each other, we're like, what the? What? Time for what? Little did I know that, you know, for me, I guess I wouldn't be where I am today without him. So, yeah, matua Jason. Thank you. So I went inside and never meditated before and joined his class, and at the end of the class he usually goes around the circle and delivers messages from the other side because he's a psychic medium. And he came over to where I was sitting after class and he said to me and the two people on side, goes, "Who over here knows a lady called Kathy?" No one thought anything of it, couldn't place it. So he goes, "Oh, I'll be back." Went round the circle, and then he came back again and he goes, "No, somebody over here knows a lady called Kathy. She's about this tall, short brown hair, in her 40s. And I was like, "Oh, hold on." I said, "Never experienced it before." And I said, "Yeah, I do, but she's not here." And he goes, "Yeah, that's right." And he goes, "It's you." He goes, "You were in a car accident, weren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay." And then he started tuning in. And he said to me, "You were in this car accident. Her name was Kathy," which it is. "You're the only one that made full recovery." And he said, Kathy's coming through and she wants you to stop blaming yourself, because I blamed myself for what happened because I couldn't stop it. I'm the type of person that'll put myself on the line for someone else. And I blamed myself for a long time. Because I couldn't stop it from happening. So, but he said, "Kathy's coming through. Wants you to stop blaming yourself. It's not your fault. She was the one driving and she's sorry." From that moment, I never missed a class, or I did my best not to miss a class. And it was every Sunday. And at that time I was still drinking alcohol and taking drugs, involved in drugs, fighting women, getting in trouble. And but I still made sure, even if I was drunk and out till 4:30 in the morning, I would still go home and get on that train. Catch 2 trains just to get to Brisbane, to where he was living, and then walk to his house to do his class. And I stuck at it because I just knew, ever since I was a little kid, I knew there was something else. I just knew it. And I knew that I didn't belong here. So I started going to his classes, and for the first 4 months of his class, I couldn't see anything. People say that, you can see so much in meditation. For the first 4 months, I saw nothing. And then it slowly progressed from there. I started seeing colours, all sorts of different colours. And then I started seeing animals, and all sorts of animals started coming to me. Whales, eagles, dolphins, wolves, turtles, butterflies. Whole zoo loads of animals started coming to me in meditations. And all animals hold different messages and meanings. And before long, I was going non-stop to his classes, He made me his student. And he began to teach me, you know, the ways to do readings, the ways to read energy, how to do meditations. And it was at his classes one Sunday that I first began my meditations. He said, okay, class, Rameka's going to run class today. And I was shocked. He put me on the spot. But I did it. And that's what I do today now. I run meditations. So I guess I don't teach meditation, because there's many styles of meditation. I run meditations, guided meditations, where I connect to spirit, or spirit, universe flows through me, and we take, because it's not me, I'm just a vessel, we take people on journeys into past lives, meeting loved ones, seeing their guides, their beings, meeting angels, healing the past, seeing their future. So many things. And those are the sort of classes that we run. And it all began in Brisbane. So before long, you know, he was showing me different things and teaching me different ways, and got to the point where he said, okay, now you have to go out into the world and do your work, answer the call of spirit. So I began doing my work, or doing their work. And it's been an amazing journey so far. So, you know, at that time I was still working through my healing to do with this accident. At that time, when I was still drinking, I got drunk one night when I was living in Burleigh here, actually. I got drunk one night and I was standing in the kitchen, had the bottle in my hand, and there happened to be a knife on the kitchen bench. And without even thinking, I was drunk, drinking, I was full of tears and I was crying, I was sobbing, you know, about what happened, and running from the pain and all that sort of stuff, the trauma. I just picked that knife up, ripped my arm open and tried to kill myself. That's a scar there. Reminder. Wrapped it up in a tea towel, went to bed. I went to the doctors first because I was freaking out. And he asked if I wanted him to look at my scar and my cut, and I said no. I went home, went to bed, and I woke up the next morning. This is during the same time that I was going to classes learning. I woke up the next morning, took the tea towel off, looked at my arm, saw the blood, the scar, and I said, no more, no more. And from that moment, I quit alcohol, quit drugs. I went cold turkey for 3.5 years. Didn't touch anything. Stopped hanging out with, you know, friends, people that I associated with at the time, and started getting my head straight, I guess, or my energy into alignment as best as I could at that time. So I did that, quit alcohol for 3.5 years. Had my moments where I wanted to drink, but I never drank. Even one day, you know, I went to the park at the art centre on the Gold Coast, and I was depressed and upset and sad and everything else. I went to the bottle store and I bought a bottle of gin. I don't know why it was gin, but I bought a bottle of gin, and I drove to the car park. Night time. I'm sitting in the car park at the art centre, and as I was sitting there, I cracked the bottle open and I burst into tears. I burst into tears because I guess 1, because I was lost, 2, because I was depressed, 3, because I was still dealing with the pain, and 4, because I felt like I was letting myself down. Because, 3.5 years, no alcohol, here I am, gonna do it. And in that moment, I received a phone call on my phone. A friend of mine, Sarah Davis, she was also my boss at the time. So I was working in retail. She had called my phone and said, "What are you doing?" And I told her, and she goes, she went off at me. She goes, "Don't you dare." So she talked me through it, and I went home, put that bottle on the shelf. She came over the next day and took the bottle. At the moment, I don't drink. I have drank since then. I just feel no need to, really. And there's so much joy and wonder and awesomeness in this world. You can have fun without alcohol. So I started doing my work, and I started off doing readings, tarot readings, card readings. I was doing card readings, and I lived between Gold Coast, and I moved up to Brisbane, and I started working out of a crystal shop in Brisbane, North Brisbane, sorry, doing readings. And as I was doing readings one day, this lady came in for a reading, and she was another significant light in my life. Kathleen Burnett. She's a psychic medium as well, and she came to me for a reading, and she ended up reading in their house, in their shop as well. And she was a strong light that helped me on many times understand energy, messages. I know, like for myself, I haven't always been a good person through my actions and words. And I know there's a lot of people out there that resonate with that. But the best that we can do is in each moment, in order to become who we're truly meant to be, right? So many, many experiences led me up to today, this point, where I am here with Brother Herman in Burleigh, Gold Coast. What I do, what my passion is helping people. I'm an energy reader. I run meditation classes. I can help with spirit, with the energies of the universe, connect people to the past, present, future, to loved ones, to who they're really meant to be. Am I psychic? Yes. Am I a medium? Yes. Am I a healer? Yes. Many things and nothing all at the same time. Because I choose not to use different labels that so many use, because I found that all those terms and labels get abused. They become abused by those who just want to make money, or by those that want to become known for specifically those things. Whereas if you live by your intuition, your guidance, if you stay true to who you are, and you speak a message that is being delivered to you, you do the work and be of service, everything will take care of itself. This is not a competition. There's more than enough out there for everybody. And everybody has a right to speak their truth. and live their path of light. So what I do my best to do is help people find that light. Help them remember. Because for me, even though we are in the Great Awakening, where so many people right across the world are awakening to what really matters, to the collective consciousness of this planet, of the universe, but it was also about the great remembering. Because as we're born into this life as children, we are born of the light, so it is already there. And we get lost along the way, through society, through our experiences, and whatever else. And what we're doing is trying to remember that, so that we can become and remember that light, who we are, who we were, who we came here to be, so that we can live our calling, our path. So I see energy, I feel energy. I can feel the slightest change in energy in a room. If people are lying, I can pick up on it straight away, because I feel that energy in myself, and I've come to realize what that energy is. You know, a lot of friends get upset because I can pick up on things, and it's not my intention, it just happens, you know, without them saying anything. I understand too, at the same time, there are lines of respect that you do not cross when it comes to spirit, when it comes to energy, right? So you cannot just automatically sit there and start tuning into somebody. You need their permission, because it's like walking into someone's house and just helping yourself to the fridge, right? Even spirit has guidelines that you must adhere by. So being that I can feel energy, one of the strongest things that I do is be an empath. You know, and growing up, I've had experiences where I've literally freaked out and I've been shaking, I've had goosebumps, I couldn't breathe. Granted, many times, yes, that was my own stuff I had to work through, like anxiety, you know, depression and whatnot. But as I woke to this path of energy, of spirit, and I come to understand and look back at those experiences and understand the experiences I was going through currently and have been, I would get those feelings every time a significant event would take place across the world. So if there was an earthquake, I would feel it in my body. If there was a typhoon, a cyclone, a hurricane, a volcano, you know, a natural or man-made event, I would feel it in my own body before it would happen. So 2 days to a week before anything happened, I would feel it in myself. I would also hear screams of people. So I remember 2010, I had a strong experience with a good friend of mine who now lives in Sydney. And we had gone to my mentors for class. And we went to my mentors for class, and before we went there, we went to see one of the aunties. She had a birthday card for me because it was around the time of my birthday in April. She had a birthday card for me, so we went and picked it up, and I sat in the car, and my friend said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Oh, I don't think I should open it yet." She goes, "Well, trust spirit and leave it there." So I left it there. We went to class, finished class. We're driving along where the ferry terminal is in Brisbane, along Coronation, whatever that road is along the river. And as we're driving along the river, I started choking. This is to explain the experiences that I've had in relation to events which take place. So we're driving along, started choking, and I felt like I was drowning underwater. And she said, "What's wrong?" So I sat with it. And then I got the message, "You need to go to Kangaroo Point." Never been there. So she drove to Kangaroo Point, got out the car, And I was walking around in a daze like someone had king hit me. And she said, do you know what they're doing? I said, no, but they do. And they said, go to water. So we went down the stairs, went to the water. And there was this boat ramp in between all the trees. There was this boat ramp in between all the trees, and I stood on the boat ramp in the water. And I said, okay, Spirit, I'm here. Show me what I need to see. When I opened my eyes, I seen King Neptune come out of the water, and he glared at me and he stabbed the river with his pitchfork. I said to my friend, water's coming for Brisbane. I said, I don't know what, but Brisbane's going to go underwater. And they said, keep going. So we started walking along the river, and there was a park bench. They told me to sit on the park bench, so we sat on the park bench. They said, in 5 minutes we're going to send you a sign. I was okay, so we started chatting, and as we're chatting, roughly 5 minutes later, I noticed this guy come running along the path. And as he's running along the path at Kangaroo Point, I was looking at him, and I said to my friend, I said, oh, there it is. On his t-shirt, he had New Orleans. That was my sign, so New Orleans went underwater. So, and then they said to me, now look at the name of the boat that's coming past. And I had one of those ferry cat things, and we're looking for the name of the boat as it was going past. And as it went past, at the back in the middle, just above the water, was the name, Neptune. So I was like, okay, cool. There's my confirmations. So I said, okay, Brisbane, water's coming for Brisbane. They said, you can go now. Went up, sat in the car, proceeded to come back to the Gold Coast, and they said, you can open the card now, it'll make sense. I opened the card and a scratchy fell out. You know the pictures on the scratchy fell out, and on the picture on the picture on the scratchy was the city of Atlantis. So I was like, okay, cool. What do you do with that sort of information? I told a few friends. Some people thought I was crazy. I guess a lot of times when you get that sort of thing, it's confirmation as to what you can do or the energy that you can receive. If I had known better, I would have spoken up, you know? But what do you do with that at the time? 10 months later, I think it was, January, February 2011, I got a phone call. My friend was on the phone, and they were freaking out. And they're like, oh, did you see the news? Did you see the news? I said, no. They said, turn the news on. So I turned the news on. And as I turned on the news, the reporters were reporting about the Brisbane floods. And they were exactly where I had been where I received my messages at Kangaroo Point. So, yeah, that sort of stuff has come and gone all throughout my life. Seeing and feeling it within myself before the actual events take place. So I work strongly with energy now. It is what I do, is what I understand, is what I love. And I help people understand that too. So where I am at today, I live for the light. I fight for the light, ride for the light, whatever you want to call it. I also make crystal amulets, and I bless them myself for protection, guidance, love, healing, for whoever the wearer may be. I run classes. I basically do what I can to help bring a positive change to this planet, to this world. It's where we are right now as a people, humanity. We are in the Great Awakening, where our energy our spirit, our physical beings are joining the collective consciousness of the entire universe. Where we are joining, we are ascending with the vibrations of all that exists. And you know, at the end of the day, for a lot of people, it becomes a choice. So you can choose to awaken and join the amazing awesomeness that is to come for the entire planet, or you can choose to stay asleep. And you know, some people will choose that because that is their purpose. It is so that those who are awakened can see the contrast, can see the difference, and let it drive them stronger to become who they're meant to be. Where we are as well, it is also understanding that even though we are in this great awakening, you're not just going to awaken and that's it, all done. When you choose to awaken, you're going to have to face everything that needs healing within who you are, within your body, within your mind, your spirit, within your life, within your jobs, your relationships, your home. In order to awaken, you must face your healing, because you cannot move forward with a conscious vibration, with a higher vibration, by carrying all the pain that one has been through. I know myself, because I've had to work through, obviously, so many things to get to where I am today, and I'm still working on it, because it doesn't stop. You know, anybody that tells you that they're fully ascended right now, it's not true. Else we would not be here. We would be up there somewhere with our brothers and sisters of the stars. So, my name is Rameka, or Ra. I know I don't come from here. I come from up there. But it is an honor and a blessing to be here as part of humanity's awakening into the higher and positive vibrations, into the collective consciousness, and the coming together, the great remembering of everything in existence. Thank you for this life.